Yeah, and we'll do on this computer. Okay, so as you probably have figured out, I'm Judy Green, and I'm running for the leadership of the Green Party of Canada. I am I'm coming to you from Nova Scotia. I'm currently the only Atlantic Canadian candidate, and I was really looking forward to being able to travel across Canada and meet everybody in all the different provinces. But as it turns out, we're actually being more efficient, more carbon sensitive, and actually being able to get in front of more people. Because even when you are physically in a place at a specific time, doesn't necessarily mean that people are being able to come from all over the province to see you. So this is actually working out very well, and I'd love to see aspects of it continue in the future, because it's allowing Greens all across Canada to connect and interact in ways that we really haven't been able to before. We've all been in our little silos a little bit. Excellent. Oh, hubby's taking the dog out. Cindy will at one point in time say hello very loudly, as Yorkies do.
Well, don't feel bad. My kid was trying to crawl on to the couch earlier today.
Oh.
It was kind of amusing. She's almost 18 months.
Oh, nice, nice.
So well, she's right in that toddler stage.
Absolutely, she's and a going concern. Yeah, my youngest grandson
is. Oh God, very dangerous.
Yeah, my youngest grandson was a year on the 1st of February, so he's not far behind her. Yeah, yeah. They're adorable. I love Jenica's videos when she's doing the virtual, and one of her kids kind of photobombs in the background. It's like, you know, this is the reality.
Every kid.
It is, isn't it?
Every kid, isn't it?
And it's exactly what we're all experiencing right now, which is kind of cool.
To be honest with you, at least it would entertain me if that happened.
Yes, absolutely. Keeps our attention for sure. Oh, there we go.
Well, you know, kids want attention too, right? So
well, absolutely, absolutely, and dogs too. And we have a guinea hen that has adopted our chickens. It showed up in our yard one day, and I'm not sure if it's a hen or a rooster. It's a guinea fowl. And it has adopted our chickens, and it's very loud. We have neighbors that are on either side of us. We have 3 acres, but it's kind of a narrow plot. So we on purpose didn't have roosters or guinea fowl because they were too loud. Well, one found us. We have no idea where it came from. So the joys of living in the country. Excellent. So I like to do these just very informal. Naomi's here now. So hi, Naomi. Are you in and settled, or are you just just getting hooked up there? You guys have been doing really well. A lot of activity in Saskatchewan. It's great to see. I think the term small but mighty has come across a number of times when speaking about the Saskatchewan Greens.
I always thought the Alberta Greens were just as mighty.
Yeah, oh, nice. Well, you guys have a bit of some of the issues very much in common, but you have your own special challenges as well.
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just having to keep an eye. Dave and Larry are just joining us now.
Naomi, your speakers. There you go.
Yeah, there you go, Naomi.
Okay, when I'm looking off to the side, I'm not being rude. I'm just trying to make sure that I don't leave anybody out in the waiting room. They don't let us just have people come directly into the meetings anymore for safety reasons.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. If you look in your chat, I put some information there about my website if you want to get in touch or sign up for my newsletter, find out what's going on, what the events are. We've got a fun event coming up on Friday. It's a fundraiser We're in the final stretch of just collecting the last few dollars in order to get the 10,000. And so it is a Acadian kitchen party. So we've had some local talent has recorded songs for us, and we're going to play them and have just a good old fun time on Friday. We've been all working so hard. This is going to be a lot of fun. So it's going to be live streamed in the Facebook event. And the link for that is also in that group chat. You can just copy and paste that right into your browser if you like.
No, Donna, I don't know if you want to do that. I don't know if you really want to run it on the Yoda.
Who is that?
I'm not sure. Naomi, can we hear you? It looks like you're trying to talk, but we're not hearing you. Your speaker's on? Not on? Can you hear us? We can't hear you.
Turn up your volume.
We can't hear you. She's going to pop out and pop back in again, perhaps.
I did that too.
Yeah, it depends on what your connection is. It can be a bit of a challenge.
Well, some areas are spottier than others in Regina.
Mm-hmm.
It's because part of the city has fiber optics, and the other part has copper. So when it comes to internet connection, it depends on what company you deal with.
That
whether you
makes
deal with
sense.
Fastel or with Access.
Makes sense.
Do you need our volumes muted for a while?
You can leave them, as long as there's not sound in the background that's distracting, you can leave them unmuted. But if you have a dog barking or something like that, we'll just ask you to mute. I find that if we don't have a huge number of people here, so it's just kind of nice to be able to have a conversation, not have to raise hands and that sort of thing, to be a little bit more natural in our interactions than we don't want to be doing stuffy meeting type of structure. Okay, so Naomi's trying to get back in.
I have a feeling that's a copper area because of the area she lives in. Cathedral area of Regina is actually an older area.
Always blame the cops.
No, I said copper. I said copper, like in terms of the internet.
I know, Sarah.
Oh, geez, you're teasing me too, Dave. It's been that kind of day
Sarah,
for me.
you would bring the star of your home to this event, at least to say
No,
hello.
Zoe was kind of actually being bad, Dave. We had to put her in timeout several times today. For not listening.
No, I've never heard little kids not listen.
I kind of expected it, but then she also had a meltdown too. So I'm like, well, I'm not going to deal with this anymore because you're not listening and you're having a meltdown at the same time.
Oh, well,
you're
I
at
think
that age.
Yeah.
I have to teach her not to have a meltdown,
Well, even the kids are having dealing with stress in different ways.
Oh yeah.
They're picking up on what's going on around as well. Their routines are all upside down. It's there's challenges for everyone.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not sure. I don't think that Naomi's able to get her sound going. So she'll have to do sign language with us. I hope she can hear.
Maybe lip reading.
Can you hear Naomi? Just kind of do a thumbs up if you can hear us. Can you hear us, Naomi?
Oh, thank goodness. You sound so wonderful.
Yay, there we go.
I have been Zooming away for months and I've been so excited about this event and then it just wouldn't work.
Oh no.
Oh no.
But it is now. Awesome. There we go.
This is awesome. Well, since I am now a few minutes late, I was actually trying to phone David Walther. Richard Jack, I saw your face flash by here, either Richard Jack or Dave Abbey.
Both
Can
are
you
here.
please phone David Walther on your landline and put him on speakerphone?
Okay.
Could you doing that? Because I have other people with me here.
Perfect. Yeah, we're gonna have to do this like a Saskatchewan Greens executive meeting
Oh,
and
yeah.
get the Luddites involved.
There you
What about
go.
Neil?
Judy
What about
Green,
Neil?
this is the real Saskatchewan experience.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
Naomi.
This is how we run our executive meetings too.
Well, during the Francophone,
Naomi, what about Neil?
I actually tried to link several people in. If Dave Abbey or Richard Jack could try to catch some of our other regulars, that would be great. I tried repeatedly with David Walther, and all it did was lose my
Give me the
audio.
phone number.
Ah.
Okay.
Yeah, and you can put, if you need to share information like a phone number or something, you can put it in chat and just either send it privately to the other person or to everyone. That would be great.
Oh, Wendy, hi. It's a two times today Wendy day. Yay.
And if there's a prize for being early or the first one into this group chat, I win.
Yes, she does.
Probably.
Yes, she
Because you
does.
tried to join
I'm gonna
yesterday.
put him on there.
Oh my God.
Oh,
We
geez.
have to add him on.
Okay.
Here we go.
Chat.
You can
Oh.
pick.
What?
What do you want to do?
Add Dave Walter to that.
No, just like when you are doing the cell phone thing.
David did know how to participate in the Zoom meeting. He was last one Sunday. He was involved through Zoom.
I know. I do remember that, and he tried today and failed. So then I tried to link him in, but I'm actually out at the Eco Village, Saskatchewan's only Eco Village, where I own property, and I don't know if that's why it's failing. But I was also here on Sunday, and our executive meeting worked fine using our same system. So I don't know why these things sometimes work and don't. But if someone who has a landline phone could call him. He was very eager. I know he's been looking forward to this as well. He's chatted with me about Judy Green before, so I'd love it if we could bring him in.
Do you mind if we hear part of this thing? Pardon? Why? They're trying to add David Walther, who can't. Actually, I'm going to get him to see if he can connect.
There is phone numbers for the Zoom to be able to connect by phone. Has he tried that?
What is this for?
This Judy Green meeting with the Saskatchewan people.
Oh.
Oh, and you're right. You know who is also not here is Larry, my wonderful CEO who set this up.
He
Yeah,
was a second ago.
he was a second ago and he's disappeared now. So he may have had problems with connection and may pop back in. There he comes in back in. There we go. Yes, we're having Saskatchewan internet challenges. and throw in some rural Nova Scotia ones and we'll have lots of fun. The first time that we did the all candidates Zoom meeting, it was in the middle of a windstorm here where we had gusts over 100 kilometers an hour and my lights kept dimming. I warned people that if I disappeared, it was not to take it personally. It was because out of my hands.
I think I was on that one because I remember that, yeah.
Yeah, it was touch and go, but we made it. We made it. It was good.
That sounds risky.
Awesome. And you know, they've all been so well attended, and every time we run one, there's always somebody comes up and goes, oh, darn, I missed it. So bless his heart, Vince will we'll schedule another one, and then he wants to make sure that everybody who wants to have the opportunity to talk to the candidates do. And we've had a number of candidates throw their hat into the ring at the very end. It looks like we may have 11 or 12 that are trying to get through vetting now. That's
I know
long.
one from another one from Vancouver Island just said that he's throwing his hat in the ring.
Oh,
And
awesome.
there's one from Northwest Territory.
Yes, yep. Yeah, she's a doctor. Courtney, I've completely forgotten her last name right now, but her first
I
name.
didn't know if it was a male or female, so I didn't
Yeah.
want to assume, right?
Yeah, no,
That would be embarrassing.
It was. I actually had the opportunity to chat with her. Miriam Haddad has also joined the race. Yeah.
Oh,
so,
okay.
yeah.
Where is she based out of?
Montreal.
Okay.
So do we want to wait and see if we can hook in these extra people, or are we starting with who's here?
It's entirely up to you. I am at your service here this evening.
Well, I'm thinking that for those who are here, why don't I just quickly introduce you, although I'm sure by now you have, with your wonderful sunny personality, everyone probably feels like they already know you.
Oh, that's sweet.
So welcome, Saskatchewan. I'm Naomi Hunter, new leader of the Saskatchewan Green Party, as most of you know. And I am very honored and pleased to be welcoming Judy N Green to Saskatchewan. I had hoped so much that we would be able to welcome her here in person. Due to COVID-19, she's coming to us by Zoom. I got to know Judy during the 2019 federal election. She was a candidate and so was I. And we ended up it was like this instant connection. We started out just sort of helping one another as Greens do across the country. And then very quickly, it just seemed like we were two people who were destined to meet. She was someone who we messaged back and forth and encouraged one another, and has ended up, not surprisingly, being from an Atlantic province. People often say, why do you think that there's so much the same between Saskatchewan and the Atlantic provinces? But I find that the Atlantic provinces actually have more in common with Saskatchewan than almost anywhere else in Canada. The people are warm. There's that small country feeling when you meet people, and everybody remembers everybody else and can figure out how they're related to someone, which we normally think of as a Saskatchewan game. Judy is a computer scientist who got her Master Computer Science from Carleton University in Ottawa, and she is also an entrepreneur, a mother, an activist, a community leader, and much more. Pretty much every time I talked to her, she would say something else. She's a life coach. I actually can't even remember. There were so many things where I would go, oh my gosh, you do that too? So as we get to know her tonight, I encourage you to ask lots of questions, because there's just so much more to find out about her than you can see on the bio on her website. Welcome to Saskatchewan, Judy. We're very happy to kick off our series of one-on-one meetings with the federal candidates with you as our first Saskatchewan visitor.
Thank you so much, Naomi. I really appreciate it.
I have a question for Judy.
Sure.
And as you know, from what I just heard, there's a zillion more people now running, or maybe running,
Yes.
if they pass the various thresholds that the parties established for being a quote approved candidate or accepted candidate. I want to know why I should make you my first choice rather than anybody else of the candidates who are running.
Well, you know, it's just like I say in an election, that we really have to look at what our top priorities are, what our top issues are, and then be able to challenge each of the candidates with those issues. What are their positions on those issues? And then you choose the best one for you. So if you are aware of what's going on within the party, then you understand that there's some
Dave Walters connected.
Yes. Yeah. Welcome, Dave. then you have to understand that there are some structural challenges within the party that's really stopped us from being as effective as a grassroots party as we have the potential to be. That we have to have somebody who's going to unify the party, because we really have, unfortunately, we've gotten into this kind of spiral of divisiveness. There is two kind of sides that one is wanting to organize the party at top down, like other political parties, and others want to reinvigorate the grassroots and kind of reclaim our grassroots, but really professionalize it and make sure we have processes in place that are going to support those activities and do it effectively and efficiently. And so it kind of depends on where you see the party going. You know, I believe that if we can invigorate the grassroots, if we can empower people on the ground, if we can be having so much fun being green that we start to attract people to the party, we have the training and we have positions for them and activities for them to do when they do step up and want to volunteer, that we're active between elections, that we're building on each of our experiences. We're not going 2 steps forward and 1 step back and starting from scratch at each election, that we're connecting with other Greens through mentorship programs between EDAs and with our youth, that we can have a fully trained and capable EDA anytime the writ drops and be prepared and ready to go. And I think that we need to be, in a way, a ready full-time party, especially in a minority government, because, I mean, with the exception of during the pandemic, I don't think we're going to have an election called next week, but it still could happen within a fairly short period of time. And that's one of the reasons we do have to go through with the leadership election in October, even if we're not actually able to meet or to go through with the biannual general meeting there in October. So it's, you know, I have skills that have been honed through doing my master's degree. My specialty was in human-computer interaction, object-oriented systems, very systems focused, very much about organizing complex structures, being able to take in a lot of data and pick out the important bits and create a structure around that, and a process very goal-oriented about being able to build the steps to get us there. So getting us to be you know, an official party status is going to be really, really critical. And I think if we can pull together, we have with the new federal council, with our new executive director, I have a lot of hope that we can actually hit these targets. And if you look at where you want to be by the next election, then you need to work backwards as to what you need to be doing, or what your goals have to be at each stage in order to achieve those goals. And we can do that. I have no doubt that we can do that, but we have to mobilize the membership. We can't rely on the few staff members in the office and our volunteer federal council. I mean, they do great work, but we need to be mobilizing our membership for training, cross-training with each other, with connecting, not having to reinvent the wheel in each and every EDA. You know, we really only have about 230 or 235 EDAs that are registered with Elections Canada. And we should be 338 functioning EDAs. And so you have to look at why that's not happening, and then trace that back and figure out what we need to do. And sometimes it's we just don't have the people in that area yet. So what do we have to do in order to build up the green presence in that area, and really need to be looking at how to do that.
We can talk about the EDA situation in Saskatchewan at some point, but I'm curious as to how what you just said would differ from any of the other candidates who are running. Because everybody talks about empowering EDAs to be active between elections. And I suspect what I'm about to say is true in other provinces too. Most people who are active in the federal Green Party are also active in the provincial Green Party.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And the problem, and I don't know if Sarah's still on the call or not, the problem has been,
Yep.
it frequently is getting volunteers to really do anything.
Mm-hmm.
We have a situation in Saskatchewan, you may already know this, that because one individual was able to handle books, he's the FA for 8 EDAs.
Yeah,
And the
that's a
chair,
lot.
and the way that this person gets the people to act as chairs
Mhm.
is to say, your time commitment is 5 minutes a year.
Wow. Yeah, see,
Well, the
that's not
reason-
going to grow the party.
Exactly, but the problem
Yeah,
is,
yeah.
Judy, is
Mhm,
that with the exception of maybe Regina Louvain,
mhm.
which is where Larry and I think Wendy might be too, and
Me.
Naomi
Sarah.
are from,
And
is
me.
that
And
there's-
Sarah
Me.
Piotrowski.
we have 14, you're right, Sarah Piotrowski, we have 14 EDs in Saskatchewan.
Mhm,
We have 12, soon to be 13 EDAs.
mhm, mhm.
What seems to be problematic is there's a perception out there that it's easy to get a bunch of volunteers to do things between elections.
Mhm.
We have problems getting people to do things during elections.
During elections.
Mhm.
Exactly.
So it's hard to get
exactly.
to do things between elections. The other thing
Yeah.
is, and it may be partly true in your province too,
Mhm.
is a number of EDAs, it's 3 hours drive
Yes.
to go from point A to point B.
Yeah.
And people just aren't going to do that.
Nope. I have the same problem. I have the same problem here in West Nova. We're 2.5 hours from one end to the other of just the riding.
You see, and I don't know how active your EDA is,
Yeah.
but essentially we have 12, soon to be 13 registered EDAs
Yeah.
out of 14. We'll be the second highest province according to our organizer, who you know from Nova Scotia.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
they're, 3/4 of them are paper EDAs.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
the CEOs and the FAs only do the minimal requirement.
Mhm.
And I think you probably know who the FA is I'm talking about.
Yes.
Because that only takes 20 minutes a year to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Well.
And the people on this call, most of us are also active in our provincial party.
Mhm. Mhm.
And we have an election about 3 weeks after the voting for the federal leadership ends.
Mhm.
So at least for the next 6 months, everybody, other than deciding who to vote for in the federal leadership contest,
Mhm.
and going through the formality of having Zoom AGMs that last 5 minutes and nobody shows up at
Mhm.
for
Mhm.
EDAs, we're going to be focused elsewhere between
Yeah.
now
There's
and
also
October
municipal
26th.
elections, Dave.
There's
And
also that 2 municipal elections, but
Yeah.
at least municipally, we don't have yet in Saskatchewan partisan politics municipally, although we could
No.
someday. I know BC has it.
Mhm.
I don't
Mhm.
know. I don't know of any other province. So I always I chuckle when I read some of the
Mhm.
wishes of the candidates to have all the 80s be these great power brokers and power doers.
Yeah.
It's a joke, and it's not. And I don't take it seriously because I know the reality out here, as do the other people on this call, particularly. Although I think I'm the only non-Regina person here.
Mhm.
Is there anybody else here from outside of Regina? Oh, David is too. David Waters in Moose Jaw. Okay.
I am calling from Craig tonight.
Yeah, but that doesn't count. You're from Regina.
And in a
no,
couple weeks, I'll
seriously,
be calling
Naomi.
from my farm up at PA.
Well, you could be, but the point is, though, is you're essentially, though, based in Regina. On all the membership lists that I've seen with your name on it, you have a Regina
All right,
address.
Dave. I'm a gypsy wanderer, though.
Well, I didn't know you'd label yourself that, considering that some people might call that inappropriate to say. And you, of all people, saying that is a bit of a surprise when you think about it. No, and I mean, there's an excellent CEO who lives in Wood Mountain, which is a rural, I think it's a hamlet, is that, who's not
Actually, I don't even think it's a hamlet. I think it's RM.
Well, maybe it's just an RM. We have a woman up in Shellbrook. We have 4 or 5 other people here in Saskatoon that could be on this call. None of them are here. And I suspect many of them wouldn't be here because they have lives. I mean, it's just the people on this phone call that don't have lives.
Something's taken over them for the time being.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And
but Dave,
I don't know how we're going to make Saskatchewan federal Greens more viable in the foreseeable future.
Well, you know, a big part of what we need to learn in EDAs is how to manage volunteers. And that's something that most of us don't have that experience with. You know, I've been volunteering since I was 6 years old, and I've been on many different boards volunteering. I collected the tickets at the Teen Town dances that my mom organized. So there are tricks, because what ends up happening is there's like a core group of 10 that tend to do all the work, and you could have 100 people step forward and say they'll volunteer, but there are ways of managing them, and it's almost like a sales funnel in a business, because volunteers come in and they really don't know the lay of the land and stuff, but you've got to give them a small job, something that they can succeed at, and then they kind of get grown as they go. Rarely do you get somebody who's ready to jump in, who has experience and confidence to be taking on a major role, especially an executive role. So we have to grow our volunteers, which means that we have to be getting the volume up there. Part of that way is just by being very visibly green in your communities. And when you're out and doing things with other like-minded organizations, like here in Nova Scotia, we have the Clean Annapolis River Project, and they do all sorts of different activities throughout the year. And as Greens, we put our green shirts on and we go out and do stuff with them. And it's just showing your greenness and working not in a partisan way, but in showing that you're members of the community and that you share the values of these other organizations. And that builds the team too. It makes it a lot of fun. I mean, people don't have time to hang out and listen in meetings. There's some people who want nothing to do with meetings. They just want a job to do, let them do it, and then they'll come back and it's done. So you have to understand how different people work as well. So having a volunteer manager that's well trained, and that's something that should be being provided by national and through mentorship with other EDAs. I've talked to a number of people who actually are fully trained, amazing volunteer managers, and they know way more about managing volunteers than I do. And I've been doing this for years. So there are things that we can learn from other people in the party that will help every single EDA, because this is a common problem. You know, we have, and people cycle through. They'll be active for a little bit, they may go away, something happens in their life, you know, they have family, children, whatever, but then they may come back again later, and that's okay. That's a natural cycle for volunteers. Very rarely do you get people who are lifers that sign up and are there for life, except for perhaps in the Lions clubs. The Lions clubs are unique.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, even with them, you have people who cycle in and cycle out. But you have to have a constant stream of new volunteers coming in and being trained. And that's going to be really, really critical for the financial officers and official agents, because that's a really intimidating job if you're not familiar with it. And even if you do have some bookkeeping experience, it's still quite intimidating with all of the books that get thrown at you. It's much better if you're paired up with somebody who can mentor you on how to work through the systems that Elections Canada provides and gives you tips and tricks. You know, we learned things at the end of the process, because we started with the previous candidate who hadn't done anything in 4 years and $36 in the bank account. We had no EDA here. We started from scratch, and that meant friends and family and people that I knew from different organizations that I was volunteering with and working with here in West Nova, and them reaching out to their friends and family and bringing people in and having fun and having potlucks and getting to know each other and building the team, and it not always being about work. Allowing family-friendly activities like that, always having a social aspect to every meeting that we did, even if it was just a half an hour after the end of the meeting, so that we could touch base with what's going on in each other's lives. You know, we're restricted to having to do that online, but in some ways, being able to do some of these meetings online is going to get us past those hurdles of distance. You know, it used to be that if I wanted to do organizational events, I'd have to repeat them 3 times through the riding in order to catch the volunteers and the circumference that they would actually travel to go. And that's extremely time consuming and hard on my gas budget as well. So now that we can do Zoom meetings, we still have some challenges because we have rural internet, and some people have to come in by phone rather than internet because of the realities of living in rural Nova Scotia, which sound like they're a lot like the realities of being in Saskatchewan in that respect. So we just have to look at what the goals are, look what the challenges are, and find solutions for them, because they do exist. And if we talk to other EDAs, that's the thing that really got me started on this journey to become leader, is talking to the other EDAs after the last election to see what worked and what didn't work. And we started to see that there were so many things that people had the same issues with, that they felt like they were on their own, that they weren't supported, that they didn't have the training or skills or ideas to be able to attract the volunteers, to manage the volunteers, and to get people trained in the different positions. You know, in an ideal world, we would have people with experience in each of the positions, but that's not the reality. You know, on my campaign, I didn't even have a campaign manager. I do for the leadership campaign, but I didn't during my own campaign. I had to fill that role myself. And we went through 3 volunteer coordinators because we realized that people would not, they'd sign up to be volunteer, but unless you picked up the phone and talked to them, they would not come out. That had to be that personal. Email didn't cut it, text didn't cut it. You had to have that personal connection with them. And have that conversation before they'd even consider coming out for even something small. And so that takes time. It takes a lot of time, and you have to be prepared for that. And you don't always have to have that fall on one person, but one person should coordinate it so that you have like the old-fashioned phone trees to phone out to people who've said that they will volunteer. If you guys are set up with GVote federally, you should be able to plug an email address in there. So when you do get people sign up or new members, you'll get an email that tells you that you have a new volunteer or new members. That's a really important email to have in there, because when somebody signs up, you want to follow up with them right away. Here in West Nova, we used to, before COVID-19, we had volunteers throughout that would set up a coffee date with them and actually go and sit in a coffee shop and talk to them about things green and what it was that they were interested in. We had a sheet that they could fill out in terms of what their skill sets were and interests were, so that we could assign them tasks that would be effective. That's what we did during the campaign, and we'll continue that going forward, because that skills inventory really helps us be able to pick up, oh, but this needs to be done. Well, who has that interest or skill? And, oh, somebody's got bookkeeping. Let's get her mentoring with Jill, who's doing the official agent stuff, or the financial agent for the EDA. Let's get her comfortable with the Elections Canada process and tools during the in-between times, so that when the campaign comes, we have another a potential official agent who has some comfort with the process under her belt. So it's yeah, it's an ongoing thing, but it needs to be planned out and have a steady stream of people coming in, because you're going to have this ebb and flow, which is just normal. It's a normal thing as people's lives change.
Judy, I have a question for you.
Sure. And I don't always see everybody. Can you say your name?
Larry?
Larry. Okay, awesome. Thank you.
I just had a question. How did you build your own EDA? Maybe you could impart some of your own experiences and how you did that for your area.
I just started asking everybody I knew if they'd be interested, saying, you know, one of the things that was really fun and attractive and easy, the things that people could do, was attending parades. Because all they had to do is we had green t-shirts they could wear, and we just took them back and washed them for the next time. So we had everything that they needed. They just needed to show up and walk in the parade and have fun. And we had people who hula hooped one of the whole parade. She hula hooped the whole way. Somebody else brought, at another parade, she brought bubble wands. And so there was bubbles going everywhere in that parade. And the young people who came with us that time, they all went with green and tie-dyed. So it was a lot of fun, and each of the parades was very different. But it was kind of a gateway fun thing for people to do that was really beneficial, because we had access to all the people along the parade route who all got to see it. Yes, there was a Green Party in the riding. And an interesting thing happened when our first parades. It was the Liberals and the Conservatives were also in the parade, and they were always sitting in their car with their stencil on the side and driving in the parade. And I didn't want a car in the parade. I wanted us walking, bicycling, on rollerblades, what have you. I didn't want to be using a vehicle. And by the second time, the Liberals were now walking beside the vehicle. And by the third time, the Conservatives were as well. And the wife of the Conservative candidate kind of jokingly cursed me, because she says she doesn't walk that far normally. So we have some interesting influences, and people pay attention to what we're doing. But it was fun, and when we're having fun, then people want to have fun with us as well. And then we can get into the serious conversations, because people, in business, they always say that people don't remember what you tell them, but they do remember how you made them feel. And that's really important with volunteers. They need to feel appreciated. They need to be given meaningful work to do, and have a place in the organization. And it's really important not to rank positions one higher than the other. There was a very misguided statement on a webinar training for the sign crew in the last election. And my sign manager came away saying he was so disgusted, because the young woman who was training, who probably had never worked on a campaign in her life, had said, well, you don't really worry about the sign people. They're the lowest people on the totem pole. Like, you never, yeah, exactly. You never want to say anything like that about any. I mean, obviously you don't. But
they're crucial.
They are. They're absolutely crucial. And if it's done well, it's like amazing. And there are great tools that our sign people can learn how to use a G-vote correctly, so that they can pick up all those signs, so that you don't lose those signs, because there's a cost involved with every single one of them. And if you can reuse them, and both Naomi and I both repainted old campaign signs for our campaigns, and there's a lot of value in doing that. So we need to make sure we pick them up. But we need to have the proper training.
I will be making it soon. I just took out a pen.
It's 7.
Yeah, well, it's almost 7:30, or it's 10 after.
So yeah, so that there's a lot of different things and lots of different ideas as well.
Well, I can't hear otherwise.
Yeah, one of the
Because this is a Zoom meeting. You need
one of the
headphones.
things that we did was with because like you said, the provincial and federal, there's a lot of cross-pollination. We all wear 2 hats. And we reached out to Jenica Atwin's. I'm just going to mute. I think it's Sarah there. We're just going to mute Sarah. We reached out to Jenica Atwin's campaign and asked them to do a quick webinar like this for us, with just tips and tricks from the campaign, things that they had done that worked really well and things that didn't work for them. And that was extremely valuable. And I told at least a half a dozen ridings that are like downtown Toronto, where they have condos and apartments, and nobody has a lawn, so lawn signs mean nothing to them there. But what Jenica's team did is they did a graphic up that could be printed off on a regular printer and put in people's windows, because at one point I thought, oh geez, we should be able to not do signs at all. I had a real challenge with us needing signs to begin with, because they are coroplast, they're not recyclable, they're expensive. You get into the whole sign wars, and my sign's bigger than your sign nonsense that goes on during a campaign. And I wanted to avoid all of that. And so we came up with a few strategies, but I like Jenica's because we found that people had a lot of pride in having a sign, a lot of pride in being able to say, yes, this is what I'm standing for, and I'm making a stand, I'm voting green, and I want everyone to know about it. So signs are really, really important. And as we kept getting called back to different areas, because as neighbors saw their neighbors putting green signs out, they wanted to put a green sign out as well. So it really was contagious and really important in that whole psychology of humanity that wants to be part of the tribe, and doesn't want to think that they think differently than anyone else. So when they see somebody else who thinks the same way as they do, they're like, oh yes, I'm not the only one. Okay, I can be proud about this now. So signs are important, but we can do them smartly as well. But so that was one idea that we got from their campaign. And I'm sure there's others that we can be sharing across with all of the experience that people have on different campaigns over the years. I would love to be doing the stencils when we do our signs. I saw Naomi did a really good job with those stencils, and we just didn't have much luck with stencils here. So we ended up freehanding, and we had some quite creative signs that people have kept as keepsakes. So, as they're actually great works of art. We have a lot of really artsy people in this area. Yeah, so we just learn from each other. Is there another question?
I like all these ideas, and I think that it's really important that Greens across the country help one another more.
Yes.
But the thing is that it is great to empower EDAs. I am 100% in favor of brainstorming and encouraging us to help ourselves. But the fact of the matter is Saskatchewan's struggling. I have been asking anyone, I'm bending the ear of anyone in the Ottawa office of the Federal Greens, what can you guys do to help us? Part of the reason that I like the idea of someone grassroots and who has struggled like yourself, perhaps ending up as leader, is that, you know what, Dave Abbey shouldn't have to do the financial returns for 46 candidates. We're not in a federal election cycle right now. Could somebody in the Federal Green Party office please give us a hand? Exactly. Saskatchewan is important. We're the stranglehold of where the Conservatives have taken over the country. I want the Federal Party to give us more help. I do not want them to take over. We are doing a very good job of running our own affairs and know our own affairs, but we could use some help. You know, like us an accountant to help Dave Abbey out. Until we can find those financial agents and business managers. These are some things that are practical details that they need to acknowledge so that we don't end up with a situation like we have in the Northwest Territories of the Yukon, where some of those provincial parties have folded.
Yes. Yep. It's a very, very good point.
If I can interject here, in terms of on a day-to-day basis, Nick Carter, who's one of the federal staffers, is quite helpful. And in terms of the federal election software, the Elections Canada staff are extremely helpful too, as will likely be, as it was 4 years ago, the provincial elections officer staff, because they all know we're all a bunch of amateurs.
Yes,
they know none of us
I know, but I want some. I am dedicated to us finding more people so that it isn't so heavy on you, but I also think that we are part of a network of Greens that could give us a hand right now.
Yep, absolutely. That's why I'd like to see a mentorship program where people who have the experience can take on the mentorship for even a week or two or whatever, to help in areas such as yours, where you may have somebody who is willing to do it but doesn't even know where to start. And there's a difference between knowing how to do it and knowing how to teach somebody how to do it. And as Dave said, there are some really good, those support lines are amazing. I know my own financial agent had never done anything like this before. She's run her own business, but this is a whole different thing. And they were an immense help. But even getting over, oh, I have to call them again. It's you have to realize they're there to provide that service for you. That's what they're there for, and they do a good job of it. But you know, even the party itself could hand out some tips and tricks, you know, even about record keeping, about how important it is to make photocopies of every check. Make sure you have the name, the amount, the date for every single check, because we ended up having to pay for copies of all of the checks because that information wasn't recorded. And once the checks were deposited, then we had to realize we had to match them up in this system. So there's simple things like that it needs to be kind of spoon-fed a little bit, rather than giving somebody this huge manual that you get from Elections Canada that's rather overwhelming. It's almost like you need a roadmap. Okay, you're in this week, what do you do? This is the next week, what do you do? And make sure that you've got your record keeping in place with little bite-sized bits of information each week, so that it's not overwhelming. Because we have the same complaint with the organizer's toolkit. There's an immense amount of information there, but it is overwhelming if you just go there. They do have an index for it now, apparently, which is wonderful. But I'd like to see roadmaps, which could just be a document, you know, saying I'm setting up a campaign. What do I need to know? Okay, well, this is a link to the first document with some instructions, a link to the second document with instructions, etc., so that you have a step-by-step guide to get you through the tasks, and you're not trying to figure it out in what order things are in, and trying to make sense of it yourself. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity for that, Naomi, but I don't think it's going to come from staff. I think it has to be organized by staff, but implemented by volunteers in the party itself, because we just don't have the resources, the staff resources, to be able to do that right now. If we became a fundraising machine, we might be able to, but right now in the middle of the pandemic, I think they're struggling pretty bad.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, and who's speaking?
Wendy.
Wendy, okay, awesome.
I don't know if this is along the lines of what we're supposed to be doing here or talking about, but the long care homes for the elderly, and what's been going on with the pandemic, what's come to light about how bad it's been in these places. Could I get your take on it as potential leader of this party?
Absolutely. The party itself did come out with a statement on the long-term care homes. We're calling for an independent inquiry investigation so that we find out what the actual causes of this are, because right now there's a lot of speculation. But this wasn't like it is an embarrassment to Canada that it took military, a third party, going into these homes for there to be the recognition of the state that these homes were in, because the family members of people living in these homes have been saying it for years. The people on the front lines have been saying it for years, and the for-profit care of our seniors in these long-term homes we have to change. We either have to have a heck of a lot of oversight to ensure that the standard of care is being upheld, or we have to take our long-term care homes back under the umbrella of our public health care. And I mean, there's pros and cons with both of it, but the biggest problems we've had have been in these private homes that some of them, the history on them has been quite disturbing, because they had been, 3 of them, I think, had been in Quebec, had been owned by a company, a Chinese company. That company had gone out of business, and so the state had taken over ownership of the homes, but they pretty much abandoned them. in the midst of COVID. So they were left to their own devices, which really should never happen. So we have to have supports in place that we care for all people in Canada, and especially those who can't care for themselves, which are definitely our seniors in these homes.
Thank you.
Yeah, and there's actually been some talk too, like I think it's Sweden. Is it Sweden? I may have the wrong country. One of the Scandinavian countries has a completely different model for housing seniors in long-term care, where they are like in kind of family pods and small homes, so that they're not in an institution per se. So there's some different models that are being looked at as well. But you know, it comes down to there are costs involved, and we have to be smart about that. But we can't be worrying about cost at the expense of our seniors.
There's been a lot of talk about the federal government stepping in and taking over and having them become part of our healthcare system. And
Yes.
what do you think about that?
I think that that's probably one of the most viable options right now, to ensure that the seniors in those facilities get the care they need. One of the most disturbing things that I heard was that the staff members who are highly trained, like we're talking registered nurses here, are daily, multiple times a day, having to deal with the reality of they know what the standard of care is, they know what they should be doing, and yet if they do that, they risk losing their job. And losing your job for doing your job should never be a circumstance that anyone has to deal with. It's a real problem with these for-profit homes, because the pressures are there by administrators that have no background in healthcare to cut corners. I mean, some of the things that were documented were that syringes were being reused. Like, that should never happen, ever. And not being realistic with the amount of time it takes to care for each resident every day, in terms of bathing and making sure that they're clean and moved and turned. That takes time, and the efforts of trying to cut down costs, they minimize the amount of time that caregivers have to provide these services, to the point where it's impossible to provide the services. And so administrators with no background in healthcare should not be making those decisions.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You know, it's, sorry.
Larry. Oh, sorry, Dave.
You can go there. You can go first. I can talk afterwards.
Okay. I just had a quick question for you. What is your plan for a post-COVID recovery for Canada? What is your plan for that?
Excellent question. I think we're going to have, from a social dynamics perspective, we're going to have a very narrow window where we could implement radical changes to a green recovery. And the problem is that if we wait too long, that window is going to close, and we're going to be dealing with some of the challenges that we had pre-COVID. People are kind of primed. Their lifestyles have already changed drastically in ways that they never thought that could happen. And things can be framed in a way that it really is a recovery and a positive step to be offering opportunities in clean energy for employment, and not going back to things that are causing climate change. So the transition really is about a smooth transition. You know, there was an article that I read recently about, they were talking about the donut model of economics, and really talking about it in this context as being more of a portal, that we have an opportunity to step through into something much better and new, but there's appetite for it. I mean, look at even all the chatter about universal basic income. There's 50 senators that have, you know, put forward a document stating that they would support universal basic income, and that was a couple months ago now. But there's more and more appetite for these types of changes, because one of the things that COVID has done is it's shown where things are really truly broken in our economy and our society. Things like, you know, well, the universal basic income or the social safety net, but also our distributed supply chain that is distributed worldwide for things that are critical items. And people are understanding that for certain things like food, you really need to make sure that we have those supplies close to our communities. Personal protective equipment, we need to be able to have our factories be able to retool and produce them in mass when we need them. It's not that they have to be doing it all the time, but we have to have that capacity. And to their credit, companies have stood up and done that. Even locally, we have some distillers, and they have switched over to making hand sanitizer. And we've seen what was it, Bauer Hockey is now doing, instead of face masks for hockey players, they're doing the PPE masks. So there are, and now that retooling is there and can be ramped up again in future. But we have to look at it that way, because it's very unlikely with climate change and deforestation that this is going to be the only zoonotic novel virus that we're exposed to in the next even 30, 40 years. So this is not going to be a one-time event, is what the experts are telling us. So the systems need to be in place. Locally here, it's interesting, one of our local seed producers, has said that they have a 1,000% increase in seed sales. Tickle, sorry. I hate those ones that are on the vocal cord and it changes your voice.
One of the things that was mentioned about the public health care system is, although it was the federal government that brought in the Medicare Act or whatever it was in the 60s, I guess, ultimately the administrators of all the public health in Canada are provincial governments, because I think the Constitution puts health and welfare under provincial responsibility.
Right.
So while the feds can provide the money, we need to have 12 provincial leaders, 12 provinces and territories agree to it. Oh, sorry, 13. Pardon me. I got corrected. 13. It's right. There's 3 territories now. That's what happens when you have a spouse with you sharper than you are on these things.
Excellent. It's always good to have a backup.
Yeah. Anyway, so I think that, and there's another reason, of course, to build stronger Green parties provincially, so they have more influence. What would really be neat is if one province, and I don't know which province it'll be, although after what I heard today, it might even be BC, or maybe even Ontario, despite Doug Ford's own philosophy, that might decide that that the long-term health care situation should be in the public health care system. It's fascinating. I have an aunt through marriage who's a resident of a long-term care home in Ottawa, and I heard you were a Carleton grad,
yes,
which is it's my alma mater too.
Oh, awesome.
A few years probably before you were, but anyways,
one or two.
this particular long care home, which is called the Glebe Center, there's been no breakout there at all.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know whether it's publicly run or privately run.
Yeah, we have local ones here as well that they have been really stringent. They're smaller, privately run, and there's been no outbreaks at all. So it really depends on whether they have been operating at a high level of care or not. Right. So it isn't, it's not universal across all long-term care, but it really does speak to the need for the inspections, and it's the inspections that have been cut back or eliminated, those deep inspections that are random without notice, that are really, really critical. And there needs to be, if we keep it private, there needs to be consequences, severe consequences to not providing care. It's like they get away with it, and it's like a child. If they keep getting away with it without any consequences, and they're making money, or they're getting a reward, they're not going to change. So it would be much easier, I think, if it was brought under the provincial health care. Awesome. Does somebody else have a question?
Could I ask another question?
Yes, you can.
So I'm new to the Greens, and I'm still pretty new to politics in general. And I've been noticing there's a Greene page on Facebook, and there's a lot of dialogue about leadership candidates, whether they are being approved or not, and whether the reasons are legitimate or not. There's unfortunately a lot of negative talking about the party and the former leader, and as a new person to the Green Party, I find that disturbing. It's not going to turn me away from the Green Party. It's just kind of I had no idea there was that kind of stuff going on, and maybe it goes on in all parties, but without putting you on the spot, I guess that's what you're here for.
I am. Yeah, so to give you a little bit of background, just before the rules for the leadership contest were announced in February, the members the contestants who had announced their intention to run had gotten together, and we had written a joint statement. I think there was about 5 of us at that time, with our recommendations, because we had been talking to people on Facebook, but in person as well. And there were certain things that the membership was concerned about. One of the things was too high a price that would exclude potentially people with, coming from underrepresented communities. And the other was that we just wanted to make sure that there was some input from membership, because there had been no opportunity for membership to even say what they wanted our leadership contest to look like. There had been no call out, there'd been no, even informal survey, any opportunity to have a voice in that. And I think that's something that we need to have structures in place to have a better opportunity for people to have these kinds of discussions. Because in the absence of something formalized, it happens anyway. That's why these Facebook groups pop up. And they're not official Green Party Facebook pages. And you have to be aware that some of the people on those pages are people who have a long history with the Green Party, and some of them have had their memberships revoked or have some hard feelings. That's just the reality of the world in Facebook. So once I understood that I kind of had more context when people were talking about things in general, and that was before the leadership contest. So what's happening now? There has been some adjustments due to COVID. So it started off that the total fees would be $50,000, and that you pay $1,000 to be vetted. That's what the cost of the vetting was, and then within 9 days or 10 days you had to have the additional $9,000, and then you would be what's considered an official candidate. And then with that official status, you would have some perks, one of which is that you'd have access to the membership list, and you would have be up on the Facebook page, not the Facebook, sorry, on the website for the Green Party, and a few other things. That's kind of morphed a little bit over time as the realities of COVID have hit us. And so the total amount now is $30,000, $10,000 initially. We're coming up on that deadline. I think it's the 2nd of June or the 3rd of June for that $10,000. I'm still trying to get those last few dollars collected. I'm in the vetting process. And then we have until September to raise an additional $20,000. So that's been changed. So the total now is $30,000. But when the rules came out, we were concerned about how the vetting would happen. So it was explained that it would be similar to a candidate's vetting, but more in depth, which, you know, that's understandable. But they wanted to reserve the ability to reject somebody, but have no explanation to the candidate as to why they were rejected. And all of us had issues with that. That at least the candidate should be aware of why they were being rejected, and it should be entirely up to the candidate as to whether that information was made public. And there should be an appeal process. So when Dimitri was announced that he had been denied, his application had been denied, and that he was putting it through the process to appeal that decision. Part of the problem is that how can you write an appeal process if you don't know why you've been denied? So that was the sticking point for me in the current situation, is how can you write that appeal if you don't know why you've been denied? So to their credit, within 24 hours of Dimitri asking for the reason, now arguably that should have been provided when the denial happened, but within 24 hours he was given the reason for denial, and he has talked it over with, and this is from his own website, his posting, nothing insider here, but he talked it over with his campaign team, and they felt that there was not a basis for that to be denied. So he's appealed it. It takes 7 days for that appeal process to go through with the committee. And then he has asked that he gets to meet with the committee once they go through that process to discuss his appeal before their final decision. So that's where we're at right now. Unfortunately, again, because the party hasn't communicated the process well enough, people are left to speculate, and there's not even when they refer you back to the document and our code of conduct, it's pretty clear what things could be that would disqualify you even as a member of the party, never mind as a candidate or as a candidate for leadership. But there is a lot of gray areas as well, left to interpretation, and that's what the challenge is. And then people are digging up things about his long and storied history with the party, making assumptions about why his application was rejected. And we don't know why. We don't. So that's all speculation and rumor right now. And I've just advised people not to engage in that, because we really don't have any facts or knowledge. And at this point, it's Dimitri's appeal, and we need to respect that, and respect that he needs to remain silent on the subject until at least the appeal process has been completed. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. You know, that's, you know, all the whole way through this, and I'm sure Dave has stories to tell too. What's really surprised me is that over and over and over again, we have lost opportunities to come out looking good in the press by not being transparent with the processes that we're doing and leaving it to people's imaginations. And that has bit us in the butt at least twice, big time, during this campaign. You know, there's just doesn't seem to be the long-term strategic thinking or the optics about what the consequences of some actions are. And oftentimes, if you know, when we were first asking about, because there was a lot of pushback on the amount that's being asked for candidates to run from members and online, and we asked about it, and we finally got a response. And the logic behind it was, we're in a minority parliament, and we could be called to run a campaign very quickly with very little notice. It could be in the middle of our leadership campaign. They didn't want to deplete the coffers that we could be having to use for that campaign on the leadership contest. So they wanted the leadership contest to be self-funding, and that makes a lot of sense in the current situation. It causes other issues as well, but that makes a lot of sense. That was logical to me, but it took a lot of back and forth and back and forth and back and forth before we finally got that explanation. And in the meantime, there's all this bad feeling that's building up, and all of this old angst and all of the old hurts and history within the party that's getting dredged up again. That's not serving the party moving forward. So I'm very disheartened that this has happened on a couple of occasions through this, because we should be, this was meant to be a unifying exercise and excitement, and to build the green presence across Canada. And unfortunately, we're really struggling with that as a goal. That's not happening. And it's further dividing. And our federal council elections were a little bit divisive, but I'm optimistic that that's going to turn around now, and those little bruises will heal, and we will move forward in a good direction. But part of it is we're a political party, and it's full of political people, and so you're going to have some political behavior of those people, good or bad. That's the personalities that we're dealing with.
Yeah.
Dave, do you want to talk about that a little bit? You have a lot of history with the party. Is that your impression of what's going on as well?
Well, my long history is only about 5 years, 6 years. So it's not that long.
It's longer than me.
I have just finished serving a term on federal council, which I found rather depressing, and didn't offer again because of the amount of business that was conducted in camera. Mm-hmm. As I've said to more than one person, when you're elected by your constituents, you're supposed to be responsive to them.
Right.
And if they ask a question, you should better give them an answer. And I can share this anecdote, I think, safely without breaking any goofy code of conduct. Mm-hmm. Last fall in the election, one of our Saskatchewan candidates had to resign. Mm-hmm. She suspected she knew the reason. She'd put up a Facebook post questioning the validity of vaccinations. Mm-hmm. And I guess somebody in Ottawa decided that they didn't want any anti-vaxxers on our slate because there might be, issues with that. And although we do have some prominent Greens in this province who have expressed anti-vaccination sentiments in the past, mm-hmm. some of whom everybody in this call mm-hmm. knows quite well. When at a federal council meeting last November in Ottawa, we were given an explanation as to in which ridings there were problems, mm-hmm. and what the disposition was, whether the candidate was allowed to run or had to resign. Mm-hmm. This particular candidate had two reasons why she was not allowed to run. Mm-hmm. She correctly guessed one. She had no idea the others. Mm-hmm. So I took it on myself to ask the then interim executive director privately, mm-hmm. could I at least share that second reason in confidence? Mm-hmm. And I was told no. Mm-hmm. Federal council meetings during my 2 years, and I hope it'll change for the new council, but I'm not overly optimistic, mm-hmm. Were much too long. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you heard, there was actually a 5-hour meeting in January.
That was my first one auditing it. And I was oh my gosh.
And I mean, part of it is caused by, and some names that have been mentioned tonight and mentioned in the media are mm-hmm. problematic. Mm-hmm. Because so many people in that body like to say, and I'll just paraphrase it, saying, as Judy says, blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. So if I'm going to agree with what Judy says, I don't have to say that. Mm-hmm. I can just vote that way whenever the vote takes place.
That's right. Yeah.
There are 3 or 4 people, and there have been some names mentioned tonight, who like to hear themselves talk. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And until they don't, council meetings are always going to be longer than they should be.
Yeah.
And worse, the 2 years I was there, they were wrestling always with the whole issue of governance. Where does the border between policy or governance and the administration? And just recognize that Emily then now, the new fellow was, whose first name I forget, the new ED, that he's in charge of all the administration stuff. Petit, yeah. And my initial impression of Petit is he'll make a good executive director, but of course I don't know, and none of us will know until time goes on.
Right.
Another example of when it relates again to that election last fall, on one of the sheets, there was another concern about a candidate who was allowed to run. A couple of weeks later, he was sitting in a campaign office with a candidate who all of you know, Neil Sinclair and myself, was telling us about immigrants to Canada. He said, there's too many immigrants coming to Canada illegally. 50,000 a year, he said. We said to him politely that was baloney.
Yeah.
And I don't think we used the word baloney. We probably used another word because it was B. And we looked it up on the internet. The answer was about 26,000. He also complained about the fact that people go to money marts and send money overseas. He thought that was part of our plan. You know, we want to stop tax havens. Now, of course, the family of new Canadians sending a couple of dollars overseas is not the type of people we're talking about.
No, that's not
We
a
want to
tax
talk
haven.
about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Fortunately, he ended up being a pure paper candidate. He didn't come up with any public meeting, because if he had, it would have embarrassed all of us.
Yeah, it would have been bad.
He actually told him he belonged more in the People's Party of Canada than in our party.
Yeah, it does sound like their policies.
But because we didn't know as a candidate, he was allowed to run.
Yeah.
I personally am of the view, and I've mused about submitting a constitutional amendment to add the words "where practical" in that section that says we have to run a candidate in every riding.
Right.
Because 4 or 5 of our campaigns were well, I was going to say were jokes. And jokes may not be a fair term, but you know, where the candidate did everything by themselves.
Yeah.
One riding in this province, the election return, which I did, showed candidate expenditures, whatever it was, several $100s. And that was it.
That was it. Yeah.
Because the EDA had no money. I think the EDA gave him money, but then he gave it all back. He decided to make I guess it's called a non-monetary contribution as the candidate. On the other hand, we had a woman who ran up north. Naomi knows her, Sarah Crane. She spent about $5,000 or $6,000. She actually took an airplane ride within northern Saskatchewan to get to see people.
Wow.
Fortunately, and she came out of the election way overspent, not in terms of the legal end, but just having no money.
Right.
But fortunately, a certain FA was able to persuade 3 Saskatoon EDAs to make donations to her campaign, which helped reduce her how much she was out of pocket.
Yes.
I mean, the candidate we had in Service Moose Mountain, super lady, super person. But again, she did almost everything herself.
Yeah.
She had a lady who helped her in Arcola, I think, do a little bit of door knocking, or maybe it was sign putting up. I don't know what it was. And I mean, and we had a fellow in Battleford, Lloydminster. He may have done 1 radio interview or 2 radio interviews. And I know, and my friend Naomi and I have had some chats about this. So what is a paper candidate? What is a real candidate?
Right.
And I don't know, other than Naomi and perhaps this woman up north in Destiny, Mississippi, Churchill River. I don't know if we had any candidates who really had full campaigns. Jan Norris, who ran at Saskatchewan University, did some door knocking. We had 2 candidates who, after they had their signatures, stopped door knocking.
Oh, really?
Had no ground game at all, none whatsoever. And one of them was our then provincial leader. And the other one is on a provincial executive and is quite vocal in his points of view. But he also happens to be a rancher, and of course he has chores to do, so it's hard to door knock when you have to do chores.
Yeah, exactly.
So you know, the campaign was impressive in some ways and very unimpressive in other ways. And I mean, people talk about what happened to those 2 candidates in BC. Elizabeth was too honest with a couple of reporters, and the NDP pounced on it. And I mean, and that's to the extent it's anybody's fault, that's her fault.
Mhm.
It was on that thing about a woman's right to choose.
Yeah, yeah,
And
that
then
blew
she was
up.
asked,
That blew
would
up
you
bad
ever
for-
have would you ever have an abortion? And she said no. And that was
Mhm.
easy for the NDP to say, we're more pro-choice than the Greens are.
Yeah.
My sense is David Murner and that, is it Russell Loy's her name, I think is, BNP, those two ones who are very close to winning, they'd be in Parliament now if it wasn't for that.
Yeah, yeah.
And that ultimately was her error. But a number of people in this party are scared to criticize her on anything. Because
Yeah,
she
I've
has been
heard
such
that.
a good asset to the party.
Yeah,
You
she
know,
has.
90% of the time she's super.
Yep.
But she is also human.
Yep. Yeah, she is. And I think that that's important too. I think sometimes we expect our leaders or those in positions of power to be superhuman, and they're not. And that was something actually surprised me during the election, because I guess growing up, for me, I came from a family that was impoverished, and people who were in even municipal positions were like, they were the people who had stores and businesses in town, and you know, they were not that anybody I identified with, so I had in my own mind put them somewhat up on a pedestal. And during the election and having the opportunity to meet people in our area here who are in those elected positions now, it was interesting, because instead of my rising to that level, they just kind of came back down to the level of everybody else in my mind, just the way that I was thinking about it, because we are all human, and that really does help you to you know, not hold people to standards that are impossible for a human being to hold, but also to look at what people's strengths and weaknesses are. And Elizabeth was the perfect leader for us during that period of growth that we had. But we need somebody now who can unify and who can build the team. And her strengths were as a parliamentarian, and her encyclopedic memory. She's amazing, being able to converse on all of the different issues and quickly, and the stats, oh my gosh, just phenomenal. But we need somebody who can build this team, who can unify the Greens across Canada right now, because this infighting and divisiveness is going to hamstring us, and we won't get anywhere in the next elections if we don't get this fixed and start pulling together in the same direction. It's like we're two horses that are hitched to the same wagon, but the central connectors between the harnesses have broken. And so we're not going in totally opposite directions. We're just not quite pulling in the same direction. And it's really slowing us down. And there's a lot of work that Canada needs us to do, that we're uniquely suited to do, that we've done the background work on. We have the policies, we have the solutions. We just need to be effective in explaining that to Canadians, and in a way that they understand. And you know, sometimes I was asked, like, how do you talk to? And you really do have to think about how you talk to different people. And it's not that you're trying to please everyone. You just have to look at it in terms of meeting them where they are and what's important to them. So somebody who is a conservative, you may want to look at the fiscal responsibility, and that our platform's fully costed, and what the cost savings are in the long run for guaranteed basic income, and the fact that a UBI was originally a conservative idea because it is so fiscally responsible. So you have to look at how you couch or present our policies in ways that resonate with the needs of the person that you're talking to. And that's a bit of a skill that we all have to kind of practice and learn.
Judy, I have some concerns about the leadership. I've already expressed some of them, but I think it's inherently unfair to set the figure as high as it's been set, because that inherently allows candidates from large urban centers to have advantages over candidates like yourself in more dispersed areas. Plus, we had the candidate enter the campaign, and a week later they qualified, when candidates who've been involved in candidates in the past are not officially qualified at this stage. And then the other thing bothered me was the sixth principle to support minority kind of candidates, and that, which I think we've always done through supporting proportional rep and other things. But when our former leader only appears with one of the many good candidates before the qualification period, it kind of leaves an impression of favoritism that I'm sure she didn't wish to do, but that's what it leaves. Instead, I would prefer that ex-leaders or that appear with all candidates and promote that sixth principle with everyone.
You're absolutely right, Richard. And unfortunately, the intent, I think, was there, but the execution fell short. Again, it could have been circumvented by simply making the announcement that this is the intention, this is what's going to happen, these are the rules for qualifying, these are the timelines, and the first person up is going to be. And instead, it came out like an endorsement. And that's how people took it, which is very unfortunate. And even when I saw that, I was a bit taken aback, because the only place in any of the documentation for the leadership package that I could find anything about, even a list of people who would qualify as diversity candidates, was the very last page of the application form. So it wasn't in anything that was publicly available for the average person, which is unfortunate, because, and I think the timing, like, you're absolutely correct. If you are coming from a less populated area, less dense, you have a less opportunity. For myself in West Nova, half the population lives at or below the poverty line. The median income is $20,000. So it's for a single person. And we raised $16,000 during the election. My base is tapped out. You know, they gave until they bled for the election. They don't have money going forward. So it's been a struggle. And then of course we got COVID-19 on top of it all, just because we like to make things easy. But you're absolutely correct that we could have, and I think it really is, it's about optics and communication. Again, you know, you set it up so that people don't have to jump to their own conclusions, because it's clearly set out that these are the rules and this is what's going to happen. It could have been prevented. And those are the types of faux pas that have been happening that I just get so frustrated with. You know, I was trained that if it's predictable, it's preventable. You know, you have to think about the consequences of your decisions and actions. And in fact, I would rather see a structure that had candidates pay $1,000 for their vetting, and then had a period of time to raise funds. And then at once they had that 10,000, then they become an official candidate. And during that period of time, once they're vetted, and to get that initial 10,000, that's the really critical one, because you don't have access to the membership list. And there does not exist a Green Party generated list of EDAs. So all 12 of the candidates have had to go to the Elections Canada website, download the latest of that's publicly available, which is only 238 EDAs, 10% of which are not accurate contact information. And so we have had to spend weeks contacting everybody to get updated information, to search on Facebook for other groups for EDAs that aren't EDAs registered yet, but that are active in social media, so we have some sort of contact. And then we have to hope that they will even talk to us, because half of them don't want to talk to us unless you're an official candidate. So once again, you're left with limited means to get to that $10,000. And when we brought this up, the response from Joanne was, well, you know, Elizabeth had to borrow money for her leadership race. Why don't you just borrow money? We're in the middle of a pandemic. I've been campaigning since June. I don't have income. Why would I borrow money that I do not have the means of paying back? And if we're having this hard a time raising the funds to this point, what makes me think I'm going to be able to pay that back and reach the $20,000 for the next stage? I don't think that's fiscally responsible. And I know for a fact that at least one other candidate is borrowing money to do that. And I know for a fact that at least 2 others are using their own private money. Elections Canada allows leadership candidates to put $25,000 of their own money into their campaign. So again, that ends up us falling into the trap of well, you have to have your own money in order to run in an election, and that's unfortunate. It really sets things up to be inherently inequitable. You know, if they'd had these conversations with members prior to, they might have chosen to do something like, okay, you have to have X number of new memberships, you know, generate new memberships in the party, or you know, some other metric to show that you are improving the party or making it better for the party. Because what's happened is that there isn't as much appetite for partisan politics at all outside the party. And so the fundraising's falling back on the members as well, who are all in the pandemic along with everybody else and are already giving a tremendous amount of their time in some cases, and now they're expected to donate as well. So it's you know, we've had a number of things kind of went against us in this, but I think there was I mean, there were decisions were made for certain reasons, but there are some consequences that perhaps hadn't been obvious when they were making those decisions. And some of that comes from the people making the decisions coming from urban areas where it's reasonably easy to raise money. You know, Paul Manley says, well, yeah, I raised like $30,000 in a couple of weeks. Well, good for you, Paul. I challenge you to do that in the Maritimes or in Saskatchewan, right? Because that's not the reality for EDAs. And I think it's a little disingenuous because, and not speaking badly of Paul, but just of that mindset, it's a little disingenuous because people are, and we're all guilty of it. We think that other people have the same experience as we do. And the reality is we don't. All across Canada, in every single riding, things are different. There may be some similarities to challenges, but each one's unique. And if we think that everyone's going to have the same experience we do, we're setting them up for failure. We have to be a little more understanding and open of what the experiences are in each of the different regions and ridings, and find an equitable way of ensuring that we have participation from those underrepresented groups, as well as from areas of the country that aren't as affluent or not as have as high a population density, because those are factors.
Thank you.
Yeah, and despite all of that, I'm still doing this. I'm not giving up. I'm nothing if not stubborn. So we will see what happens. We'll find out, our campaign will find out tomorrow where we're at. We're doing the fundraiser on Friday, and then I'm making phone calls, continuing to make phone calls through the weekend, and hopefully we will get those last dollars in. I think we're getting fairly close. I think we're within a couple of $1,000s at this point. So that's doing much better considering when the pandemic hit, we did take that time off from fundraising because it just wasn't appropriate at that point in time.
Are the donations to you, are they tax deductible?
Yes, all the donations have to go through the GPC website, but it's a special page that you can only get to with the proper link. My website is in the beginning of the chat there. judyandgreen.ca. The donate page there gives you a couple of options, but they all end up going through GPC. So the online now, because we've got that deadline, is really the best way to go. And you direct the donation. So on that, you click on donate, then you'll get my website with an option to click on the web. So you click on web, it takes you to a GPC site that allows you to put in the candidate's name. And it's important that you put my name in there, or it just goes to GPC and it doesn't get assigned to my campaign.
And what's the deadline?
The deadline is, I think it's the 2nd of June. So we've got until, I think, Monday, Tuesday.
Okay.
And I think that it's also possible when directing donations, I've read all the rules, because at one point I was planning to throw my hat in there as well. It's possible to actually have your membership fee in the federal party be earmarked towards one of the candidates. Yes. So that's what I did. And I know a lot of people who have done that. They've renewed their federal membership and just said, I want this earmarked for X candidate of my choice.
Exactly.
I think I'm now, because I've done it twice, I think I'm actually paid up with my Green Party membership for something like 8 years, probably.
That's awesome. We're not getting rid of you anytime soon, which is wonderful, Nyla.
Apparently.
Yes, exactly. So if you're renewing your membership anyway, you want to make sure that it is up to date so that you can vote. Remember that Green Party members as young as 14 can be members of the Green Party and can vote for the leader. As long as they are 14 by, everybody has to be a member by, I think, the 3rd of September, and they have to be 14 by the 3rd of October.
And what's the name of your website again?
It's my name, Judy, Judyn Green.ca.
Thank you.
You bet. And you can sign up for my newsletter there as well. So I'm doing campaign newsletters. Just mostly it's about what events are coming up, what's been happening. On Facebook, we did a really fun, have you seen that on the frames for your Facebook profile? We have a frame for the Facebook profile now, which is a lot of fun, where you can say, I'm with Judy. I think David Murner and I are the only ones who have them so far. If you search in frames for GPC leader, our options come up there. For those who are social media experts.
And what time is this over?
I'm willing to stay here as long as you guys want to.
Okay.
As long as you've got questions, I'm here.
Laura wants to go for coffee.
That's a good idea. I think I can smell it from here. It's awesome. Excellent, excellent. I'm just keeping an eye on, because some people have problems. They pop out and have to pop back in. So I want to make sure nobody's left outside.
Hi, Laura.
I'll tell her you said hi. I got a text from her.
Excellent. Yeah, so it's interesting. I am actually really proud of my fellow contestants for this leadership race. I think we have a depth of knowledge and experience in this race that outshines the candidates that are running for the leadership of the Conservatives. I think we have a lot to be proud of with the Green Party, with the people who put their hats in the ring here.
Hear, hear.
Mm-hmm.
Mind you, we wouldn't have had to be very good to be better than those characters.
I'm not going to disagree with you, Dave.
We had that. What isn't one of their candidates still the one that made the anti-Chinese remarks about the medical doctor? Yeah,
about Dr. Tam. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Judy, it's Dave Walter here.
Hi, Dave.
I have absolutely no problem thinking of you as the unifier that the party leadership needs.
Thank you for that.
I do hope that you have the ability to recruit very close personal assistance.
Mm-hmm.
Especially, well, I hope that you have somebody who can consistently appear with you
Mm-hmm.
as your French voice.
Ah, yes, that's really, really important. Actually, I have a good friend, Andre Muse, who is my translator. And I am learning French. I am in French classes on every Monday night. I am working on that. It is going to be important for a lot of people. And I think it's important as a leader to be able to converse in both official languages. But I think it's even more important that the party puts the emphasis on the importance of our messaging to be correct, and that we partner with people within the French community to ensure that that happens. You know, sometimes there's this attitude of, well, this should happen. And because, again, it's that worldview, because it's available all around them in their community, they assume that that capability is also available in head office in Ottawa, and that's not always the case. So we need to be looking at partnering with our French comrades in Quebec and in New Brunswick to ensure that our translations are effective, that everything is in both official languages, that when signs are sent to Quebec, that they have the option of having them completely en français. And if it's bilingual, that the French comes first. And in even further around Canada in general, as to whether they want lawn signs or not, because in downtown Toronto, there's no need for them. There's nowhere to put them. So we need to look at some other options for them. But there's a lot of work to be done, and I think some rifts to be healed between the Francophones in the party as well. And one of the things that I'm learning from a Mi'kmaq friend of mine, who is a language keeper here in El Sitcook, is how very much the language expresses the worldview of the people. And as I'm learning French, I'm seeing that that's very much the case as well. It's not just about translating word for word. It's about how the people who grow up in that culture actually see the world. And so it is very illuminating learning it the way that I'm learning the language. And I think that that is very important for us to understand within the party as well, and to respect that it is a different perspective, and that we have to be respectful of that and ensure that their needs are being met, and not assume that their experiences and needs are the same as the Anglophones in the country.
Right. Sounds good to me. Thanks.
You're welcome. Excellent question. Always comes up on the French on the French ones for sure. First question when people pop in, how's your French? How's your French? So it's important. It's important. Yeah, I'm getting much better with the pronunciation, and I usually try to do a pre-written opening statement that I practice like heck to get my pronunciation correctly, but I'm not at the stage where I can on the fly construct sentences yet.
Yeah, sure.
Not without perhaps making some absolutely horrible faux pas and say something completely inappropriate. So I'm a little worried about that aspect. I've seen that happen before.
Oh, I see that Sarah wants to be unmuted to say something, I think.
Sure. Oh, Sarah, I don't see Sarah on the guest list here.
Well, she said that she's disconnected, but I thought it was just that she was muted or something.
No, she must have popped off. She can pop back on again if she has the link.
I'm not sure she does.
Okay, what does she say here? Oh, Larry says that Zoom keeps crashing the laptop. Oh no, but you're still back, which is good.
Hi, David Walter, by the way.
Hi, Wendy.
Excellent. Excellent. So what are the things that you guys want to see in your leader? I mean, this is a question that membership didn't get asked, and I think that the answers are really important for us all to know.
I think Naomi sort of articulated what we want to see in a leader, and that is a recognition that the world does not revolve around Vancouver Island, Vancouver, Toronto, and Ottawa. And there are people out in the boonies.
Mm-hmm.
that feel left out. And I know you talked before about managing a volunteer as well. It's difficult to manage volunteers when there's no volunteers to manage.
Yes, so you have to
It's,
attract them first.
yeah, exactly.
Mhm. Yeah,
And it's
absolutely.
amazing how people will volunteer
Mhm.
when they're asked at first,
Mhm.
and then when they're phoned to ask if they'll do a specific job,
Mhm.
it's amazing how schedules change.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I mean,
It-
we had a lady in this province that expressed some interest in taking over my job in the provincial party,
Mhm.
and was all set to meet for coffee with Naomi and me one Friday morning several months ago, when Naomi was in Saskatoon. And ever since that day, she has never returned a phone call.
Yeah, and it does. It happened on my campaign too.
Okay.
I met for coffee, and people were all gung ho, and then it just didn't work. The schedules just didn't
Yeah.
work, and you know,
I mean,
and you have to just kind of let that go, not take it
yeah,
personally. It's hard because
well,
you're investing time, but
yeah.
yeah.
Maybe we should have offered to take her for alcohol or a whole meal.
Food is always a good idea, especially with the youth. But food is always a good idea.
As a matter of fact, I think we had a small fundraiser in Saskatoon that she came to 2 years ago at a Pizza Hut.
Mm-hmm.
So she is a Green supporter.
Excellent.
It's just that it's hard to motivate her to do anything.
Yeah.
We also had a situation in this province, and some of you will know who I'm talking about. The woman that ran at Saskatoon University for the Green Party in 2015 is now employed by CUPE. And she was told that she was expected to work for another political party in the election.
Wow, really?
Well, the impression was, maybe she wasn't told it, but she was given that impression.
But there's a lot of pressure that is unspoken in the workplace oftentimes. Yeah.
This is the birthplace of the NDP.
Yes, absolutely. Well, you know, one of the things that, and I like that Richard Zorowski has, I've spoken to him at length, and he is our climate change critic. He is a municipal councillor in the city of Halifax here in Nova Scotia, and he's very outspoken on a number of things. But he is really a proponent of growing greens in all levels of government. So I think we need to kind of open our voice up to that even though municipalities are nonpartisan, you can still have people who have green values running for those positions. Because right now we have a situation where people who are getting elected, and then all of the lobby groups and the people who are fighting for climate change or fighting against climate change are left with trying to change people's minds or convince them to think differently, where we really do need to be encouraging people who have those green values and have those understanding of the crisis that we are facing, and get them in all levels of government, because then the decision making is going to be a whole lot better, even if they're not having Green Party signs on their lawn for their municipal election, but they're still green. And we have somebody in our riding who'll be running municipally, who has been very active and has run previously as a Green in a by-election. Yeah, on provincially, but now they'll be running municipally. So I think that there's a lot of merit to that as well, in encouraging people just to get involved in whatever level of government that interests them, because there are different focuses, whether it's municipal, provincial, or federal.
It's after 11 o'clock where you are, isn't it?
It's 11:23.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so crazy, these time zones, but it's a necessity in the world.
It is.
To have time zones.
It is.
But as you know, that we in Saskatchewan, excuse me, have one habit that nobody else does.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We don't play with clocks.
I know. I like that. I like that habit. I would love to adopt that habit across Canada.
My colleague from Saskatchewan, do you remember the reason why that happened?
I think it had something to do about farming and the cows.
A bit about that.
Yeah.
And a bit about in the 60s, when it was actually, it may have been a Liberal government in power, not a CCF government. University students would drink till 5 to midnight in Saskatoon, then drive half an hour outside the city where it's only 11:30. Although I think the cows may have been the more real reason, because cows are used to being milked at a certain
At a
time.
certain time, yeah.
On the other hand, the cows do survive in Alberta and in Manitoba and Ontario with the time change.
They do, they do.
But
And you're not severely traumatized, I don't think so.
I thought it was that Saskatchewan doesn't like change. We usually recommend that people turn their calendars back 200 years when they enter the province too.
I think there's some of those communities all across Canada. And sometimes there are things that we can learn from those communities that we can bring forward too. It's not always a bad thing.
Does anyone else, I know that Regina Wascana riding was on for a while. I'm not sure if they still are. Is there anyone who hasn't spoken yet who has any questions?
Naomi, shame on you. Look at Richard Jack.
Richard spoke.
No, but he was Regina Wascana. He changed his name because he was told how to do that.
Oh, sorry, Richard.
I won't tell you who told him how to do it, although you can probably guess.
Well, I love that Vince Fiatorio, I always stumble over his last name, who was organizing the joint leadership events, had been offering Zoom training for people, going through all of the different things that you can do and navigating through Zoom. So that was quite well attended and appreciated for a number of members.
You know, maybe what we should be doing as a party, and it will be after the leadership convention's all over, or leadership races, that we should be asking the people who own Zoom, oh wait, we can't do it federally, we'd have to do it provincially, I guess, because Zoom's a corporation, they can't give money federally, but they can give money. All the provincial parties should ask Zoom for a donation.
Yeah.
Because we've used their business so much the last several months. And
we sure have, yeah. And we've been not using the free free version.
By the way, in Nova Scotia, is there a limit on donations to provincial political parties?
Yes,
you know?
Yes, there is. I don't remember exactly what it is, but there are limits, yeah.
Because here in Saskatchewan, it's the Wild West.
Oh, really?
There is no limit at all.
Oh, wow. Yeah, no, there are limits, yeah.
I don't know how many other provinces are like us. I don't know if anybody else here knows, but no, here it's what's the Wild West.
Wow.
The only thing that the only concern people have, a restriction, is that if you give more than $250 a year, it's public information.
Yeah.
But I don't know what the practice is in other provinces.
Well, I know it's interesting because of that public nature of political donations. I have a friend who's the mayor of a neighboring town who would like to support me but can't, because his position requires that he be completely nonpartisan and can't be supporting anyone in a political party. And it's really surprised me how many people can't. There are people who depend on working the polls, and they also can't show up as supporting any political party, so they can't donate. And certain jobs, if you're in some of the provincial and federal jobs, you can't support a political party either. So it's interesting that there are quite a few people that are excluded from participating other than voting in our political system. That surprised me, actually. I know that there are some people, like small businesses, that depend on local contracts from whatever government of the day is here locally, that won't support parties because of making sure that they don't piss off whoever's going to be in power. But it was quite interesting to find out that there's actually edicts against certain people in certain positions having any activity in a political party. So does anyone have any other questions? These have been great questions, and I've loved chatting with you all tonight.
How many other provinces have you had these type of chats with?
I have, New Brunswick was the first one because their AGM had been canceled. So we did our meet and greet by by Zoom, and we've been in a couple places in Ontario and then Saskatchewan. And our schedule is filling up quite nicely, which is wonderful.
Hello.
Because we are finally connecting with people in
Pretty good.
EDAs. And once we get through in our official, there'll be other EDAs that will schedule events with us. There's quite a number that decided that they wouldn't engage with
That's
candidates
weird. I
until
mean,
they were
it's only the top part of the
yeah,
page.
until
and,
they were
I'm
I'm just going to mute Dave here. Until they were official, and they had the option to do that. Mhm.
Judy, I believe that that's actually somebody trying to late join in with us.
Okay.
So we'll just see if Dave's able to get them in on speakerphone or something,
Sure.
or figure out, I think it might be Sarah with another question. So I will encourage you to stay on a little longer, because I think that there's another question or two rolling in.
Sure, absolutely, absolutely. So what are some of the other things that you guys are wanting to see from your leadership?
Well, I have not, I'm going to think how to phrase this. I have admired how many of the candidates have managed to do politics differently through this leadership race.
Mm-hmm.
I very much want to see a leader who doesn't do politics the way I often see the Conservatives in the House of Commons, or actually almost all the other parties conduct themselves by attacking one another.
Mm-hmm.
And it's certainly not something that I find tasteful or something that I'm willing to accept in a Green Party of Canada leader.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that the biggest quality that I'm looking for is integrity, someone in difficult situations who will find a way to express themselves without attacking back when they are attacked. And this is something that I have always felt strongly about, but watching the leadership race unfold has made me feel even more so that way.
What?
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna subscribe to the legacy.
So that would be a big quality that I'm hoping for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I agree with you, Naomi. I think that that's a requirement, should be a requirement of all of our MPs. You know, we have rules against ad hominem attacks. We need to be engaging that within the party. I've actually just been exposed to something like we're pacifists and are all about nonviolence. There's actually nonviolent communication. How you can have conversations with people in ways that couches your language so that it isn't in any way aggressive. And it doesn't water down the conversation. It just makes it so that you're not attacking. And it's interesting. Like, I've been married for 37 years, and our son was diagnosed with attention deficit disorder, and it put a lot of stress on us when he was about 5 years old. And so we did some parenting courses. And one of the things that was interesting is that I learned about I statements and you statements. And so something as simple as not using absolutes like you always, but really turning things around in terms of, you know, I'm really having a problem. I'm very uncomfortable when this happens. Not you make me feel like, right? So there's a very different way of couching your words to be non-aggressive, non-violent. And I think that that's some training and some education that as nonviolence being one of our core principles, that is something worthwhile to add to the reading club. If you're having a reading club in your area, which is a fun activity to do in the cold winter months, and now we can do it on Zoom. And moving forward, because I think it's really, really important. We have to walk the talk and not devolve to the same level as what we're seeing currently, because, you know, question period's always been a bit contentious. I don't remember it ever being quite so toxic as it has been, and the constant attacks that really have no substance to them. They're just, you know, there's no goal, or there's no nothing constructive in them at all, and it's just a waste of everybody's time. And I'm all about getting work done. I don't like having my time wasted. I'm sure others don't either. And sometimes that's what we end up having in question period.
My wife and I both have nicknamed question period as circus.
As a circus, absolutely. I can remember I was school trustee in Eastern Passage, and Jason would have been 8 years old at that time, and a very rambunctious 8-year-old. And we were watching question period for some reason. And I'm looking at what's happening on the screen, and I'm looking at my ADHD kid who's bouncing off the walls, and I'm going, my goodness, my 6-year-old kid with ADHD is better behaved than these adults in question period. And I'm like, I'm not interested in politics.
Mind you, yeah. Right now, has not the decorum changed a bit because they've been working together?
I think so. I think so.
Because of the pandemic.
Yes, exactly. And having these hybrid parliaments and the Zoom parliaments, I think is changing the dynamic as well, which is interesting. I would like to see some of this carrying forward. I mean, we have to have democracy, of course, and have the opportunity for that question period. But I think we can be smart. I mean, this is made in heaven for Greens because we're not having as much travel necessary. You know, the amount of carbon that we're saving by not having to travel back and forth is wonderful. And so some of this, I think, is going to stick around. Some of the good parts. Awesome. So any other questions?
Did we get Sarah back on?
No, I think she's probably gone. If you remember, she has a small person to look after quite a bit. So
probably bedtime for them.
I think it was probably before we started.
Yeah. Excellent, excellent. Well, I wanted you all to know that you can reach out to me anytime. I really want to be as accessible as I possibly can be during the campaign. I'm sure that if I'm successful in this and actually win the leadership, I may not be quite as accessible going forward, but I want to be there for people as much as possible. And I want to let people know that if I'm not successful, I'm not going anywhere. You know, I've been asked to work on 2 different policies for the biannual AGM, and I'm really excited about getting a chance to do some policy work in areas that I'm really, really interested in and working with a great group of people. So there's still lots of work to be done in all sorts of different areas of the party. And we still have to work up it. Pardon?
Can I ask which areas they are? Which 2 policy areas are you working on?
There's 2. There's one on co-leadership.
Right.
We're evaluating the possibility of a co-leadership proposal and what that would look like. And there's another one actually on our position on a diet. So in support of the new Canada Food Guide, because right now we have our policy is not in alignment with what the current science that supports the Canada Food Guide is. So we want to make sure that, and I'm kind of tempering those in the party who would love for us to say thou shalt all be vegan, but that's not going to happen. That would be pretty much political suicide for the party. Even if individuals may believe that to be true, because nobody likes to be told. I've been doing nutrition coaching for 6 years, so I know people don't want to be told what they can or cannot eat. You get very visceral reactions from people. So we have to make sure that it's all evidence-based and that we have the support, and we still have a balance with supporting our agricultural sector as well. So, yeah.
Anyway, thank you very much, Judy. I'm going to sign off.
Okay,
because
awesome.
we usually watch the news at 9, which is in about 20 minutes from now.
Excellent.
And we're also up early. And I also had an interrupted phone call because I'm involved in a small business right now. So thank you very much, and look forward to chatting with you again.
Awesome. And thanks for your support, Dave. It really means a lot. Thank you.
Bye, Dave.
Bye.
Bonne nuit, as I practice my French.
Is there anyone else who has any questions, or are we sort of ready to call it a wrap?
Thank you very much for all the information, Judy. I hadn't made up my mind on who I would be voting for, so.
There's still a lot to hear from, and this is what I always say, is that you need to find the candidate that's going to closely match what the issues are that are important for you. Now, the only difference is with the Green Party is that we represent the policy that's made by the membership. So leaders may have positions on certain things, but they are beholden to uphold and speak for the policy of the members. So people always say, what's your platform? And I go, well, my platform's your platform. Because the leader has as much influence on policy as everybody else does.
Well, I see hadn't. I like everything that I've heard from you so far.
Good,
so
thank you.
I think you have my vote.
Thank you.
Judy, I just had a quick question. I didn't know about your experience with food security. What is, do you have like a plan when it comes to food security? It's important to myself because I actually am on the one of the board members on we actually deal with providing like meals to schools.
Excellent.
Here in Regina. So if you're not in a too big of a hurry,
sure.
And if you have like a quick one on that.
It's one of my passions, actually. Having been a nutrition coach for the last 6 years and having had some health issues that I've overcome because of with the help of diet and lifestyle changes, it's really important to me. When we moved here and I was working with some people on the community health board, and some of the nutritionists who are in public health were saying they'd done some studies, and in Rimbey was, Digby was one of the worst hit areas for food insecurity. 1 in 3 people in the town of Rimbey are food insecure. So that means if you're not, one of your neighbors is. And that was a stat that was really quite staggering. So we started looking at some of the options, and we looked at the mobile food market, which is in Halifax, and we're a lot smaller population density than in the city. But we looked at a model and designed a model, and we actually won their mentorship. We had to write a proposal, and we won their mentorship. And that's been wonderful because we've been able to put a program in place where we partner with a local workshop of people with mental and physical disabilities who help us pack bags of groceries every second week, and are able to provide subsidized fresh fruit and vegetables. At least half of the package every time is from local producers. And it's funny how people think local. Many people think Maritimes is local. No, in Digby is local. Valley's not even local. They're very specific about what local is here. So one of the things that we wanted to do was expand into the schools to help there. I'm a huge advocate of having a Canada-wide school food program. We have some individual groups and organizations that are doing that in schools here in the Valley, but I would like to see a national program. You know, the reality that we are the only one of the G7 that does not have a national school lunch program is quite the embarrassment, and that needs to be rectified. It's you know, there's no excuse for anybody going hungry and not having access to healthy food in Canada. And we need to work to make that a reality.
When you're looking at the Canada Food Guide, I would encourage looking to South America. I have been very excited that Canada finally updated their food guide as part of my working life. I had previously been legally required to, even though I actually have a natural nutrition degree, I was legally required to refer all questions about nutrition to the Canada Food Guide. But I would find every excuse I could to redirect people and say, well, I am supposed to tell you to go to the Canada Food Guide. However, right. And so that had been my standard line for quite a few years now. I was happy that Canada updated, but when you look to South America, we actually have the most progressive national food guides in the world. The food guides reflect Indigenous knowledge of foods of the area. The food guides are using local foods first and foremost. And so Canada can still update this quite a bit. And I feel that instead of looking at these extremist issues and always marginalizing, I am a farmer as well. So instead of pointing fingers and saying, well, I feel that these groups, farmers, the transportation industry, et cetera, are doing it wrong. I think that we could instead look to how we can talk in a more positive way about this and what could be right. And that is the other thing that South America has done very well, Costa Rica in particular, and Brazil, in that they have really looked and said, this is our culture. So there's a cultural aspect as well. Yeah.
So Costa Rica, which is a beautiful country. I was very lucky to go there recently.
Costa Rica, Brazil, and most South American countries have based their food guides on this sort of a model. So
excellent.
Anyway, I couldn't help but bop in there because
that's awesome. Well, thank you. I
because this is why you and I got along. So
that's right. That's right. Exactly. And I have to agree with you that I was very pleased when this Canada food guide came out, because it was something that was much more in alignment with what my research and training was telling me was a better choices. And they did make some effort to include some Indigenous options, but it's not in the main guide. You have a kind of an add-on for Canada. Excellent. Well, thank you very much for everybody for coming and sticking with us right to the bitter end, which is awesome. And again, reach out to me if you have further questions or want clarification on anything or have some great information for me. That would be fabulous. I'm really trying to build on this, the work that our team is doing in collecting all of this contact information, and I would love to. It's all publicly available information, so I don't see a problem with sharing it so that people can connect with other EDAs. Awesome.
Thank you for doing
so much, Judy.
So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. So thank you so much, Naomi.
Oh, you're welcome. We're still here.
Yeah, we're still here. I think David's still with us too, but I'm not sure if he's on or not.
Well, thank you so much. And I do know that on your time, this is quite late at night.
It is.
So I really appreciate you accommodating, but
no, that's a part of the job. It's all good. It's all good. It was really good to hear from the concerns about Saskatchewan, because that really gives us a better idea too about what the biggest issues are, and you know, attracting volunteers is a big one for all of us, and we need to get better at it. So yes, and the training and supports. It's going to be good. It's going to be good.
Well, and yeah, we're starting to starting to freeze up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I hope that more Saskatchewan people will join into some of the debates as well.